Now, whether you only know him from the movies, or whether you're a committed Tolkien scholar who can expertly identify the Jungian shadow that exists in the relation between him and Frodo, you probably know this little ghoulish creature who's always yearning for his precious. You don't need to know how deeply Tolkien took from his intense study of Beowulf as an academic critic to have a pretty clear idea of who Gollum is and his general place in the pop cultural landscape. But what I don't think a lot of people are aware of is the extent to which the Lord of the Rings movies changed the death of Gollum to make it more blockbuster friendly, and in doing so created a scene that is quite memorable but is significantly different from the one in the book and loses a lot of the philosophical and ideological impact of the scene from the book, which is very central to the overall ideas of the Lord of the Rings books. This is not a minor plot change like a few events being shifted around or even Tom Bombadil being cut because the movies don't have space for his shenanigans. This is something a bit more significant, so let's dive into it. Now, I will start with Gollum's death in the films because that is the depiction of that death that most people probably know. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the depiction in the movies is so iconic and so seared into the collective consciousness of 21st century America that even if you've read the books, which a lot of people have, even if more people have seen the movies, the movie version is probably the version you most remember, and not just because our brains more accurately and robustly respond to visual stimuli. There are a lot of people I know in my life who have read the books and watched the movies, and yet when I talk to them about how Gollum dies, they almost always go to the version in the movies, because that version is so visceral and so evocative. It's a startling scene, I will fully admit that. We're in a precipice overlooking the infernal fires of Mount Doom. Frodo, so strong and so noble and so caring, nonetheless succumbs to the temptation of the ring. He is much less prone to it than a prideful, if well-intentioned man like Boromir, who becomes so twisted by the pull of the ring that he seeks to take it from Frodo and use it for his own purposes. And this is the reason that Frodo is the one who has to carry the ring. Aragorn, for instance, would be a much better fighter and leader than Frodo. He would have had a much better chance of withstanding the machinations and the schemes of Mordor and all the horrors that await there, as opposed to Sam and Frodo, whose chance of survival is, they know, quite limited. But Aragorn is aware in a way that Boromir is not. He doesn't think of himself as being holier than thou. He doesn't think of himself as being completely separate from a man like Boromir. Quite the opposite. He knows that this darkness that consumed Boromir exists to a certain extent in all people, all of the race of man, whereas that temptation exists to a significantly lesser degree in the hobbits, which for me is a significant, perhaps the primary reason why Aragorn thought it best to have the hobbits take the ring in the first place, instead of going himself. But even hobbits, as sweet and tender as they can be, are not completely immune to the intoxication of the ring, especially as the ring's effect on those who wear it intensifies the closer one gets to Mount Doom and the fires of Mordor. Frodo is overwhelmed by those influences, by those temptations. So we're in Mount Doom. It's all colored and saturated, orange and red. There's this grand yet solemn music playing. Everything is symphonic, almost operatic. And Frodo, given the same choice that consumed Aragorn's ancestor all those generations before, still cannot bring himself to let go of the ring. He takes it for himself and revels in its power. But there is another creature there who wants the ring as badly, if not more so, than Frodo, and that is Gollum. Gollum and Frodo tussle for the ring as the flames burble and hiss there in Mount Doom. Eventually, both tumble over the side. Frodo manages to cling on to the main little promontory overlooking the flames, whereas Gollum, who bites off Frodo's finger with the ring on it, tumbles from that overlook into the flames and has just enough time to watch the ring, his precious, his beloved artifact for which he has been searching and loving and yearning for centuries, slowly but systematically and inevitably dissolve into the flames as Gollum himself perishes. It's a dark and gorgeously concocted scene, and it is, for about 80 to 90% of it, the same as it is in the books, but the small amount that they changed is significant. In both versions, the ring, the symbol of the depraved, money-obsessed, power-obsessed materialism that has consumed the residents of Middle-earth and drew them away from virtue and selflessness, is gone. And as it vanishes, Mordor's reign is over, and the age of goodness and morality is able to resume. And I love the scene in the movies, don't get me wrong. Elijah Wood is not exactly a great actor, but he does a fantastic job at conveying Frodo's manic, selfish fury in these scenes, the conflicts raging within him. But in the books, there is no tussle. Gollum takes the ring, he's dancing with it, he's overwhelmed by the ecstasy of having it, and then, without thinking, just so caught up in that mania, he tumbles over the edge and falls, without being pushed or without a struggle, into the flames. He dies, and the ring melts. Now, I can absolutely understand why the filmmakers decided to change this. It's not exactly a big climactic movie scene to have this little fiend who finally has the treasure he sought topple over the side without a struggle or without any real influence from Frodo. But there is a reason that Tolkien made it this way, just like there is a reason that the books do not end with the overthrow of Mordor and continue into the scouring of the Shire, which demonstrates the extent to which all that has happened has destroyed the home the hobbits fought to save. And while they can save the Shire to a certain extent, they cannot return it to its original idyllic state. The Shire cannot fully be saved, just like Frodo. As in that case, there is a reason Tolkien constructs this scene like he does. He was concerned with the vanity of people's ambitions. Even if those ambitions come from a moral place, there is a limitation to that which we can know. There is a limitation to our human will and our human desire to achieve our goals. There are forces and influences far beyond us. Just as Frodo, despite his earnest, good-hearted will, cannot stop the ring's power from controlling him, so does the destruction of the ring come not from Frodo or from any conscious effort on the part of any character, but from the pure mania that consumes Gollum and leads him to fall helplessly into the flames that forged the ring he so treasured. Now, Frodo is of course vital to the destruction of the ring. This destruction would not have happened without Frodo, and no one perhaps, not even Sam, I'd argue, could have carried the ring as long as Frodo did without succumbing to its vile and corrosive influences. But ultimately, Frodo is not in control. He is an agent of powers far beyond his own individual desires and ego. And it is those mysterious forces, those shocking twists of fate that we cannot account for, that eventually lead to the destruction of the ring and the overthrow of its influence through the character of Gollum. The book scene is adamant that the revitalization of the world, while it's something that we can play a key and important and necessary part in, ultimately owes to forces that extend far beyond our comprehension and understanding. That is the core of the book scene, and I think it's a little unfortunate that in the movie scene it's reduced to this little tussle where, oh no, they both fall off, but Frodo is saved. It kind of diminishes a lot of the real ideological and philosophical and psychological impact that the scene in the books, surprising and shocking as it is, has. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. I'm quite interested to see what they do with the new Lord of the Rings show. I hope it's as good as the books and the movies. Fingers crossed, but who knows. We can only hope for the best. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon, promise you that. Thank y'all again. Adios, comrades.